You ever notice how the people who talk the loudest about freedom are usually the ones most trapped by their own habits? The ones who preach about change but can't stand still long enough to face themselves. You know that friend who complains about their job every single day but won't update their resume. Or the one who says they want a different life but keeps replaying the same routine like a broken record. We all want freedom, but most of us look for it in the wrong places. We chase it through money, through validation, through distractions that make us feel alive for a moment. And then the moment fades, and we're right back where we started. Truth is, freedom isn't found on a mountaintop or buried in a self-help book. It's built quietly, in the ordinary moments when nobody's watching and nothing feels inspiring. It's built in the small decisions you make when no one will ever applaud you for them. I've watched people chain themselves to habits they don't even remember choosing. Wake up, scroll, feel anxious, eat, get hurt, shut down, repeat. And then they wonder why life feels like Groundhog Day wearing different clothes. But there's one practice, one deceptively simple shift that can unlock that door you've been pushing against for years. It's not glamorous, won't make a good Instagram caption, but it works with the same quiet power as roots breaking through concrete. Because the truth is this. Most of us aren't imprisoned by circumstances. We're imprisoned by the person we refuse to stop being. And that prison, it's got a door. Always has. You've just been too busy managing the cell to notice the handle. What I'm about to share isn't theory. It's the difference between people who talk about change and people who become it. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for 10 minutes without reaching for your phone? No music, no podcast, no so-called productive distraction, just you and your thoughts. Most people can't do it. They'll last maybe 90 seconds before the discomfort starts scratching at the walls of their mind. And the moment it gets too loud inside, they reach for something, anything, to drown it out. That, right there, is the diagnosis. You can't be free from what you keep running from. Every time you grab your phone, the second you feel bored, anxious, or restless, you're teaching yourself that silence is danger. That your own mind is a place to escape, not explore. But freedom begins where running ends. The habit that changes everything starts here, sitting with yourself. Not meditating with an app. Not chasing peace through some background sound. Just sitting. Letting thoughts rise. Letting feelings surface. No judgment. No fixing. No performance. Because here's the truth most people never face. You cannot transform what you refuse to confront. You cannot heal what you keep medicated with distraction. You cannot become someone new while avoiding who you currently are. Think of a warrior before battle. They don't hype themselves up with noise. They sit, they sharpen their blade, they make peace with what's coming. That silence isn't weakness. It's preparation. It's power. When you learn to be still, you stop depending on the world to make you feel whole. You stop needing constant stimulation just to feel alive. You become the kind of person who can think clearly in chaos because you've practiced thinking in quiet. See, Most people fill their lives with noise because they're terrified of what they'll discover in the silence. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's grief. Maybe it's the uncomfortable realization that the life they're living doesn't match the one they want. But that discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's pointing directly toward the work that needs to happen. Every thought you run from is a signpost toward freedom. So start there. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone, before you fill your mind with everyone else's opinions, sit for 10 minutes. No music, no guidance, just presence. Your mind will fight you. It'll throw tantrums like a child being told no for the first time. That's normal. That's progress. You're breaking a pattern that's been running your life on autopilot. You're reclaiming authority over your own attention. And attention, brother, that's the currency of this century. Whoever controls it controls your life. So take it back, one silent morning at a time. You know what's wild? Most people spend more time curating how they look than how they live. They polish their image until it shines, but never polish their soul. They'll spend 3 hours finding the perfect filter for a photo, but not 3 minutes asking hard questions about their character. And then they wonder why their life feels hollow, why it feels like performance instead of purpose. That's where the mirror comes in, not the one hanging in your bathroom, the one inside your conscience. Because transformation doesn't begin when you post a quote online. It begins when you're willing to stand still, look straight at yourself, and stop adjusting the lighting. Most people can't do that. They avoid mirrors that show truth. They tilt the angle until they like what they see. They defend their flaws instead of examining them. And that's why growth never takes root. Because they're busy editing the reflection instead of changing the reality. Let me tell you something. The habit that separates people who grow from people who just age is brutal honesty with themselves. Not self-hate, not shame, but the kind of honesty that strips away illusion and says, here's who I am, without the story, without the excuses. You've got to be willing to look at your patterns without the filters. You've got to see your choices without the justifications. You've got to face the impact you've had on others without trying to soften it with your intent. It's standing before an emotional mirror and refusing to blink. It's the moment you stop pretending and start observing. Because observation, without judgment, is the birthplace of truth. Every evening, when the world goes quiet and the mask starts to slip, that's your window. That's when your mind is honest enough to tell the truth. That's when you take inventory. Not of what happened to you, but what you did. Not how others failed you, but how you showed up. Did you keep your word, even in the small things? Did you react, or did you respond? Did you build something, or just consume? Did you live by intention, or default? And hear me. This isn't about perfection. Perfection is a performance trap for people who are afraid of being human. This is about pattern recognition. It's about seeing your reflection clearly enough to admit when you're off course. You are not your worst day, but you are absolutely the sum of your repeated choices. That thing you did once, that's an event. That thing you keep doing, that's your identity. Character is built in silence, in repetition, in those invisible moments when nobody's watching. Every decision adds a brushstroke. Every reaction paints another shade. And over time, the picture becomes undeniable. Imagine a gardener walking through their garden at dusk. They're not only admiring the flowers, they're checking for weeds, noticing dry soil, spotting disease before it spreads. That's self-awareness. It's not judgment, it's care. Real love includes truth, and that's what this practice is. You're walking through your own life with clear eyes, seeing where growth is happening and where decay is hiding. Most people lie to themselves because truth demands change, and change demands discomfort. They tell themselves, "I'm doing fine," when they're actually standing still. They mistake movement for progress, noise for meaning, comfort for growth. But wanting to be better isn't the same as becoming better. Intention without examination is just daydreaming with vocabulary. You can't course correct if you refuse to admit you're off course. So here's how you make it real. Get a journal. Not for pretty thoughts, for truth, for truth, for data, for accountability. Every night, write 3 things. One way you move forward today, one way you held yourself back, and one pattern you noticed that keeps showing up. No judgment, no drama, just evidence. Because self-awareness isn't a destination, it's a discipline. It's the daily act of seeing yourself clearly before the world forces you to. And once you start seeing clearly, you can't unsee. And once you can't unsee, you can't keep pretending. That's when life begins to change quietly beneath the surface. You start making decisions from truth instead of comfort. You start showing up differently, with intention, with alignment, with authenticity. You stop blaming circumstances for results that your patterns created, and that's when freedom stops being something you chase and starts being something you build. Because the people who transform their lives, they're not the lucky ones. They're the honest ones. They're the ones who can say, "I did that," without needing to say, "But here's why it wasn't my fault." They understand something most people never grasp. That accountability isn't punishment, it's power. You can only change what you own, and you can only own what you're willing to see. That's the mirror principle. The habit of facing yourself until excuses evaporate and truth becomes your foundation. The mirror doesn't judge you, it simply reflects you. What you do with that reflection, that's where your freedom begins. Let's talk about a lie that's been worshipped for decades. The lie that productivity equals progress. You've seen it everywhere. People wearing busyness like a badge of honor, hustling 16 hours a day, checking off boxes like their soul depends on it. Their calendars full, their minds scattered, their hearts empty. And yeah, they're moving, but not forward. See, there's a difference between motion and momentum, between staying active and actually advancing, between looking busy and becoming better. And until you see that difference clearly, you'll confuse exhaustion for purpose. That's where this habit comes in, the daily reckoning. A simple question that can cut through all the noise. Did I move toward the person I want to become today? Or did I just maintain the person I already am? You'd be amazed how honest that one question gets when you ask it at night, when the world goes quiet and there's no audience left to impress. because that's when the truth shows up. Most people spend their days maintaining their current reality. They wake up, fight the same fires, repeat the same arguments, perform the same reactions. They call it doing their best, but really, they're just keeping the machine running. Maintenance isn't growth. Survival isn't progress. Busyness is often just avoidance wearing a productive mask. Think about it. You can answer every email, attend every meeting, run every errand, post every update, and still end the day unchanged. Tired? Yes. Productive? Maybe. But changed? No. And the truth is, you don't need to be busy. You need to be building. And building requires intention. So before your head hits the pillow tonight, ask yourself, what did I really do today? Did I chase distractions or did I chase destiny? Did I invest in my future or did I rent another day of comfort? Because here's something people don't want to admit. The things that transform your life rarely feel urgent. Nobody's going to text you to remind you to grow. Your dreams don't send calendar invites. Discipline doesn't buzz in your pocket like a notification. The loudest things in your life are usually the least important. And the quiet things, the gym, the book, the reflection, the uncomfortable conversation, those are the things that compound into freedom. And that's what the daily reckoning is about. Deliberate awareness. It's not about guilt. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about accountability through clarity. You look at your day through three simple lenses: maintenance, regression, progression. Maintenance, the things you did to keep life running. The basics, the chores, the obligations, important but not growth. Regression, the moments that pulled you backward. The scrolling, the avoidance, the promises broken quietly in the dark. And progression, the choices that built you. The hard thing you did anyway. The small step that nobody saw, but your future self will thank you for. Most people's days are 90% maintenance, 9% regression, 1% progression, and they wonder why their life feels stuck. You can't maintain your way to transformation. You can't sprinkle a little growth on top of chaos and call it evolution. And 1% effort on your potential means it'll take 100 days to make 1 day's worth of real progress. The math doesn't lie. Your calendar doesn't lie. Your energy doesn't lie. Only your excuses do. But when you start this reckoning every night, you stop lying to yourself about where your time really goes. You start to see the hidden patterns, the invisible thieves. You'll notice how your mornings drift away in distractions, how your evenings dissolve in numbing habits, how fear disguises itself as being tired. And once you see the pattern, you can break it. Awareness creates leverage, and leverage creates change. The daily reckoning transforms invisible time into visible truth. Because freedom isn't doing less, it's doing what matters most. It's choosing intention over inertia. It's ending the day proud of your direction, not just your effort. See, most people die buried in busyness, surrounded by tasks that never meant anything. But when you build this habit, you end your day knowing exactly what counted. You know which moments were worth your time, which choices were worth your future. You know when you moved the needle, even if the world didn't notice. Because results are lagging indicators. They show up long after the work is done. So when progress feels invisible, remember, the work is still accumulating interest in the background. You just have to keep investing. So tonight, before you sleep, do the audit. Maintenance, regression, progression. Be honest, be gentle, but don't be blind. Then wake up tomorrow and make one adjustment, one shift, one conscious correction. You're not changing your life overnight. You're changing one day, and then another, and then another, until momentum replaces motion and direction replaces distraction. That's the daily reckoning, the habit of facing your truth before the world distracts you again. The habit that frees you from the lie of busyness and reminds you what progress actually feels like: quiet, intentional, and consistent. Freedom isn't found in how much you did today. It's found in what you became by doing it. Here's something nobody wants to say out loud. Most of your problems aren't caused by fate. They're not cosmic tests. They're not even bad luck. They're caused by the boundaries you never built. By the yes you said when your whole spirit whispered no. By the access you gave to people who hadn't earned it. By the energy you poured into situations that were draining you dry. And the wild part? You volunteered for it. Not because you wanted pain, but because saying no felt harder than disappearing inside someone else's expectations. See, real freedom doesn't come from doing whatever you want, whenever you want. That's not maturity. That's chaos. Freedom is having the strength to say no to what doesn't serve your higher path, even when it feels good in the moment. It's understanding that every yes you give the wrong thing is a silent no to the future you claim to want. And here's where people get stuck. They call it kindness. They call it loyalty. They call it being a good person. But the truth, it's fear. Fear of disappointing others. Fear of losing approval. Fear of being misunderstood. So they keep saying yes until there's nothing left of them but resentment wearing a polite smile. That's why you need a boundary blueprint. Not rules forced on you, not emotional walls that keep everyone out, but a clear, personal design, a map of what you allow, what you protect, and what you will no longer tolerate. Your peace is a structure. Your time is a gate, and you are the architect. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're protection. They're the quiet understanding that your energy, your attention, your mental space are limited resources, and you can't keep spending them like they're infinite and still expect to build a meaningful life. Think about it like a fortress, a real one. Stone walls, guarded gates, a drawbridge that doesn't lower for just anyone. That fortress doesn't exist to isolate. It exists to defend. Some people get access immediately because they've proven trust. Some need to state their purpose before entering. And some, they're simply not allowed inside. Not because they're evil, but because they're careless. And carelessness is dangerous around what's sacred. That's what boundaries are, sacred architecture. Not everyone who knocks deserves entry. So start with this. Identify your non-negotiables. What behaviors cross the line no matter who they come from? disrespect, unreliability, manipulation, gossip. Write them down. Because if your boundaries live only in your head, they'll die in confusion. Next, audit your commitments. Look at your calendar. Look at your text threads. Look at who drains you the most. Ask yourself, does this serve who I'm becoming or who I used to be? Does this add to my energy or quietly steal it? Am I doing this from love or from fear of letting someone down? Then comes the hardest part: enforcement. A boundary without enforcement is just wishful thinking. You can't declare peace if you keep opening the door to chaos. People will test you, especially those who benefited from your lack of limits. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. They'll make you feel guilty for protecting what they used to exploit. Let them talk. Their discomfort is proof your blueprint is working. Remember this. Anyone who's angry about your boundaries was benefiting from your absence of them. That guilt you feel, that's the echo of old conditioning, not truth. You're not being cruel. You're being clear. And clarity is kindness in the long run. Because when you build boundaries, you stop resenting the people you once overgave to. You stop expecting others to read your mind. You stop living exhausted from trying to be everything to everyone. Here's what that looks like in real life. You stop replying immediately to every message out of obligation. You stop attending every event just because you were invited. You stop rescuing people who refuse to rescue themselves. You stop explaining your decisions to those committed to misunderstanding you. And with every no, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. You create space for peace to live again. But boundaries don't just protect you from others. They protect you from yourself, from your need to be needed, from your addiction to approval, from that little voice that says, if I just give a little more, they'll finally see my worth. No, brother. Your worth isn't measured by how much of yourself you sacrifice. It's measured by how much of yourself you protect. This is the blueprint: clarity, commitment, courage. Clarity to know what's right for your peace. Commitment to enforce it when it's uncomfortable. And courage to hold it even when you're called selfish. Because choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's stewardship. You're responsible for your own energy. And if you keep giving it away recklessly, you'll have nothing left to power your purpose. And here's the reward. When you build boundaries, you start attracting people who respect them. When you stop saying yes to everything, your yes becomes sacred again. When you stop being available for every request, you become available for what actually matters. Freedom isn't about how many doors you can walk through. It's about how many doors you can close without guilt. So draw your map, build your fortress, guard your peace, and watch how your life transforms when you stop letting everyone have access to everything. Because not everyone deserves a seat at the table of your energy. And that's not cruelty. That's wisdom. Your boundary blueprint isn't a cage. It's the key that keeps you free. You're carrying around versions of yourself that expired years ago. And you wonder why moving forward feels like dragging dead weight uphill. Think about it. You're not tired because the road is long. You're tired because you're pulling a past that refuses to die. You're holding on to people you've already outgrown, identities you no longer fit, stories that don't belong to the person you're becoming. That's the secret weight of most human beings. They're not crushed by the future. They're buried under the past. The old dream that once made sense, but no longer does. The mistake that still whispers, "You'll never change." The friendship that drains you dry, but you keep alive because you're scared to admit it's over. The version of you that felt safe because it didn't require courage. And here's the truth that most people never face. You cannot step into who you're meant to be while clutching who you used to be. You cannot become new while defending the version of yourself that's already expired. So the habit that sets you free is simple, but it's not easy. A ritual of release. Intentional, deliberate, honest, not dramatic, not ceremonial for show, but quiet, private, sacred. A moment where you decide, this no longer comes with me, because freedom isn't always about adding more to your life. Sometimes it's about finally subtracting what doesn't belong. Ask yourself, how much of your mental energy is being wasted replaying arguments that ended years ago? How many people still live rent-free in your mind because you keep revisiting what you should have said, what you should have done, how you should have ended it? How many dreams are you protecting simply because you've already invested too much time to admit they're no longer meant for you? We call it loyalty. We call it consistency. But deep down, it's fear. Fear of letting go of the identity that gave you comfort, even if that comfort became a cage. So here's the ritual. Once a month, not once in a lifetime. Once a month, pause and make space for emotional inventory. Get still. Get honest. Make 3 lists. The first list, relationships that drain more than they give. Not enemies, not villains, just people you maintain out of guilt, fear, or nostalgia. People who keep you anchored to an old version of yourself. The second list, stories you keep telling yourself about who you are. I'm bad with money. I'm not a people person. I always mess things up. Those sentences may have been true once, but truth has an expiration date. You've grown. You've changed. But you keep wearing those labels because they're familiar. The third list, dreams you're still chasing just because you've already invested too much to quit. Goals that no longer align with your spirit. Projects that once mattered but now feel like obligations. That's not ambition. That's emotional debt. Now look at those lists. Really look. And instead of attacking what you see, thank it. Thank every person, every story, every dream for what it taught you. Then, with grace, not anger, release it. If it's a person, create distance with honesty, not hostility. If it's an old version of yourself, write them a letter. Tell them you're grateful for how far they brought you. Then give them permission to rest. They did their job. Their chapter is over. If it's a dream that no longer fits, don't mourn it. Evolve it. Its lesson is complete. Its time is done. You're allowed to redirect your fire. Because growth isn't always addition. It's refinement. The sculptor doesn't build by adding clay. They build by carving away everything that isn't the masterpiece. And you, my friend, are the masterpiece being revealed through subtraction. But I get it. Letting go feels like loss. It feels like you're betraying the person you were, but you're not betraying them. You're honoring them by continuing to grow. You're saying, thank you for getting me here, but I've got to keep walking. See, every version of you served a purpose. The reckless version taught you consequence. The fearful version taught you humility. The stubborn version taught you resilience. The broken version taught you strength. And when you understand that, you stop clinging to those versions and start celebrating them. You stop needing closure. You create it. And the more you practice release, the lighter you become. The lighter you become, the faster you move. And the faster you move, the more clearly you see what's ahead instead of what's behind. Most people spend their whole lives stuck halfway, half in the past, half in the present. They never arrive because they never let go. They talk about new beginnings while keeping both hands tied to what's old. But you can break that cycle with intention, with courage, with honesty. Make release your ritual. Once a month, review your lists. Burn them if you have to. Pray over them if that's your way. But let them go. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Because the moment you stop dragging expired versions of yourself into the future, life opens up. Energy returns. Clarity sharpens. You stop managing the ghosts of who you were and start building the reality of who you are becoming. Freedom isn't always a door you walk through. Sometimes it's a weight you set down. So release. The people who no longer see you clearly, the stories that no longer define you, the dreams that no longer excite you. Release it all, not in anger, but in reverence. Because the moment you let go, you'll realize something beautiful. You were never stuck. You were just holding on too tightly to things that had already left. And once you understand that, once you learn to release with grace instead of resistance, you'll discover the kind of peace that feels like breathing for the first time in years. That's the release ritual. Not a single act, a rhythm. Not an event, a way of living. A habit of freedom that keeps your soul light enough to rise. Let go of what's gone. Thank it for its lesson, and keep walking. Lighter, freer, truer, truer. Because the weight you drop today becomes the wings you grow tomorrow. You ever notice how the biggest regrets don't come from what we didn't say? They come from the words we couldn't take back. 3 seconds of anger. One sentence spoken without thought. And suddenly, something sacred is shattered. You can spend years building trust, brick by brick, and lose it in one careless moment, a single line said in pride or fear or ego. And you'll spend months, sometimes years, wishing you could unsay it. We don't talk enough about that power, the power of words. They're invisible, but they shape everything. They build bridges, or they burn them. They heal, or they wound. They open hearts, or they close them forever. And unlike wounds on the body, wounds from words don't scab over quickly. They echo. They replay. They become memories that talk back in quiet moments. So here's the simple habit that can save you from yourself. a three-part filter that turns impulse into wisdom. Before you speak, in person, in text, in email, in anger, pause and run your words through three gates. The first gate, is it true? And I don't mean true from your perspective. I mean verifiably, undeniably true. Not assumption, not rumor, not emotional interpretation. Half the world's chaos exists because people speak what they feel instead of what's real. You might be right about how something felt, but feelings aren't facts. Truth requires evidence. Truth requires patience. Truth requires the courage to slow down and see clearly before you speak. The second gate, is it kind? Kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means remembering the human being on the other side of your sentence. You can deliver hard truth with dignity. You can hold people accountable without humiliation. Truth delivered without empathy isn't truth. And the people who call cruelty honesty are usually just hiding behind their pain. The third gate, is it necessary? This one hurts. Because sometimes we're not speaking to communicate, we're speaking to release emotion. We're venting, we're reacting, we're trying to win. And in that rush to feel powerful, we create destruction we didn't intend. So ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does it need to be said right now? And am I the one who needs to say it? Because silence, when it's chosen, isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Think about how many arguments would never start if people stopped at the first gate. Is it true? How many relationships would survive if they paused at the second? Is it kind? How much regret would disappear if they respected the third? Is it necessary? See, most people speak first and deal with the damage later, but this habit flips the order. It makes you deal with your truth before you release it into the world, and that one pause can save you from years of cleanup. And let's be honest, silence is uncomfortable, especially when emotions are high. Your ego wants release. Your anger wants control. Your pain wants to make someone else feel it too. But strength is restraint. Maturity is mastery. Wisdom is waiting until the storm inside you settles enough for your words to build, not break. Authenticity isn't saying everything you feel. It's saying what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, in a way that heals more than it harms. Because letting your emotions run your mouth isn't freedom. It's slavery to impulse disguised as honesty. Imagine this. Every word you speak is a brick. You can use those bricks to build a foundation, or you can throw them through windows. Most people, when hurt, pick up bricks and start throwing, calling it speaking their truth. And yeah, windows break, hearts crack, trust bleeds. And after the dust settles, they stand in the wreckage whispering, I was just being real. But being real without being wise isn't strength, it's chaos. And chaos is expensive, so before you speak, stop. Count to 5. Take a breath deep enough to reset your emotions. Then walk your words through the filter. True, kind, necessary. If it passes all three, speak with confidence. If it fails even one, rework it, or stay silent. Because silence, used with intention, can protect everything that matters. And what happens when you start doing this consistently? Your relationships change. People start trusting your words again. Your voice begins to carry weight because you don't waste it. You stop being the loudest person in the room and start being the one everyone listens to. Your reputation grows, not from performance, but from restraint. Your peace deepens because you stop regretting yesterday's sentences. And most importantly, you start to respect yourself. Because every time you control your words, you remind yourself that you're in control of your world. Discipline in language is discipline in life. And the person who can master their tongue can master almost anything. So practice the filter. True, kind, necessary. Use it with your family. Use it with your friends. Use it with yourself. Because the truth is, words don't just describe your world, they create it. And when you learn to speak with precision and compassion, you stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming a builder of peace. Freedom isn't saying whatever you feel. Freedom is being so in control of your voice that when you speak, the world listens, not out of fear, but out of respect. That's the truth filter. The habit that turns ordinary communication into conscious creation. The simple act of checking your words before you release them, so your voice builds more bridges than it burns. Let's talk about something most people avoid. Your circle, your environment, the people you keep close. Because whether you realize it or not, your circle is either raising your ceiling or reinforcing your floor. And I'm not talking about the obvious villains, the toxic ones who drain you on sight. I'm talking about the good people, the comfortable people, the familiar faces who love you exactly as you are, but have no interest in who you could become. The truth? Loyalty to people who refuse to grow can become disloyalty to your own evolution. And that's a truth that hurts before it heals. See, growth threatens comfort, and comfort always fights back. That's why when you start changing, when you start elevating, you'll feel resistance, not from enemies, but from people who love the version of you that played small. They're not evil. They're not plotting against you. They're just invested in the story where you never outshine them. Because your growth holds up a mirror to their stagnation. And mirrors make people uncomfortable, but staying small so others can stay comfortable. That's the quietest form of self-betrayal. So here's the habit, the growth audit. Once every few months, sit down and look at the people who have access to your time, your energy, and your attention. Everyone. Family, friends, coworkers, partners, mentors. And ask yourself one question that cuts through everything. Does this person challenge me to grow? Or keep me comfortable staying the same? Because comfort isn't always kindness. Sometimes comfort is the slow poison that kills potential while calling itself love. Growth-oriented relationships look different. They don't flatter you. They don't agree with every complaint. They don't enable your excuses. They ask hard questions. They call out your patterns. They hold you accountable when you drift. They remind you what you said you wanted when you start settling. And yeah, Those relationships are uncomfortable. They demand honesty. They require vulnerability. But that's the soil where transformation grows. Comfort-oriented relationships, on the other hand, feel easy. They never challenge your thinking. They tell you what you want to hear. They validate your fears instead of confronting them. They celebrate your intentions instead of your actions. And over time, they quietly build a cage made of familiarity. It's not that they mean harm. They just stop growing. And they need you to stay where they are so they don't have to face the question, why haven't I moved? That's why this audit is painful. Because it's not about good or bad people. It's about alignment. It's about whether the people who once fit your story still fit your destiny. So here's how you do it. Take inventory. Write down the names of everyone you spend consistent time with. Next to each name, ask, when I'm with this person, do I feel expanded or drained? Do our conversations stretch my mind or shrink my focus? Do I leave feeling inspired or exhausted? Do they support my excuses or strengthen my discipline? Then look at the patterns. Because relationships, like habits, create rhythm, and the rhythm you're in determines the direction you move. Some people will lift you higher without saying a word. Their energy alone calls you to rise. Others will keep you circling the same mountain, talking about change, but never climbing. And when you see that clearly, when the pattern shows itself, that's when you face the hardest truth of all. Some of the people who loved you the most in one season can't follow you into the next. Not because they're against you, but because they stopped evolving when you kept growing. And you have to decide, do I keep shrinking to fit their comfort zone? Or do I keep expanding, even if it means walking alone for a while? Because elevation requires separation. Not always permanently, but always intentionally. When you run this audit, you don't have to cut people off dramatically. You don't need to make announcements. You simply reallocate your energy. You shift access. You give more time to those who stretch you. You give less time to those who stall you. Some people get front row seats in your life. Others watch from the balcony, not out of arrogance, out of wisdom. Because you finally understand that your time is sacred and not everyone deserves it in equal measure. And when you make that shift, things start to move. You think sharper, you feel lighter, your focus deepens. Because the people around you are no longer feeding your comfort, they're feeding your calling. Yes, some will notice the distance. Some will say you've changed. And you have. That's the point. You can't keep apologizing for your evolution just because it makes others uncomfortable. The ones who are really for you. They'll grow with you, or they'll cheer from afar. They won't guilt you for outgrowing them. They'll bless you for becoming who you were meant to be. So run the audit. Keep it honest. Keep it sacred. Your circle determines your ceiling. And if your ceiling feels too low, maybe it's time to raise the company you keep. Growth isn't a solo act, but it is a selective one. And freedom isn't just about who you become. It's about who you allow to shape that becoming. Surround yourself with builders, with challengers, with people who tell you the truth, even when it hurts, with souls who remind you that you're capable of more. Because you are. And the moment you start protecting your growth as fiercely as you protect your comfort, that's the moment your life stops repeating and starts expanding. That's the growth audit. Simple habit, hard truth, life-changing result. Every morning, you face the most dangerous liar you'll ever meet. He doesn't live outside. He doesn't post online. He lives in your reflection. That's the one who knows how to sound reasonable when you break your promises. The one who can justify every skipped commitment, every lost discipline, every small betrayal that no one else will ever see. You can't outsmart that version of you. You can't charm him. You can't deceive him with motivational talk or pretend schedules, because he's seen it all. He knows every time you said tomorrow and meant never. He knows every goal that died quietly under the excuse called, "I'm tired." And the problem isn't that you lied to him once. It's that you started believing those lies. See, the human mind is brilliant at negotiation. It can turn guilt into logic in 5 seconds flat. It can convince you that comfort is self-care, that procrastination is patience, that fear is intuition. And every time you fall for it, your power slips a little further away. That's why this next habit, the accountability mirror, is non-negotiable. Because if you can't be brutally honest with yourself, you'll always live at the mercy of your excuses. The accountability mirror isn't just about reflection, it's confrontation. You stand there, alone, and you talk to the person who keeps standing between you and your destiny. No filters, no fake affirmations, no audience to impress, just you and truth. And here's the ritual. Every morning, before the world gets loud, go to the mirror. Look yourself in the eye. Not your hair, not your clothes, your eyes. And ask 3 questions that cut deeper than any self-help quote ever could. 1. What promise did I break yesterday? Not to someone else, to myself. Did I skip the workout I said I'd do? Did I waste the hours I swore I'd protect? Did I talk about discipline while scrolling through distractions? Don't soften the answers. Don't explain. Just acknowledge. Awareness is the first layer of respect. 2. What standard did I lower to make today easier? We all do it. We shrink our expectations a little bit at a time until mediocrity feels normal. You say, "I'll just do half," or "I'll start next week," or "It's fine for now." But fine is the slow death of potential. Because every time you lower your standard, you train yourself to tolerate less from your own greatness. 3. What truth am I avoiding right now? Maybe it's a habit that's killing your momentum. Maybe it's a relationship that no longer aligns with your values. Maybe it's the uncomfortable fact that you're more addicted to talking about change than actually creating it. Whatever it is, name it. Drag it into the light, because what stays hidden controls you. But what's spoken loses its power. This is the part that separates the average from the uncommon. Average people seek comfort from the mirror. They want reassurance. They want validation. They want to be told, "You're doing your best." But uncommon people, the ones who rise, they use the mirror as a weapon of clarity. They don't look for comfort. They look for truth. Because they know the mirror never lies. It only reflects what you give it. Some mornings, that reflection will make you proud. Other mornings, it'll sting like salt on a wound. But both are progress because you're finally facing reality instead of hiding behind potential. Potential means nothing if it never turns into performance. And performance begins with accountability. When you make this habit consistent, something changes in you. The excuses start sounding hollow. The lies lose their rhythm. You catch yourself mid-sentence saying, "I'll do it later," and then hearing your reflection whisper back, "We've been here before." And that whisper, that's your conscience waking up. That's self-respect rebuilding. The accountability mirror doesn't judge you, it reminds you. Reminds you who you said you'd become. Reminds you what you're capable of when you stop running from responsibility. Reminds you that discipline isn't punishment, it's alignment. And that alignment turns chaos into clarity, because the truth will always cost you something: comfort, denial, ego, but the lies will cost you everything. So tomorrow morning, don't just glance at yourself and move on. Stop. Meet your own eyes. And don't leave until you've told yourself the truth. Because the world will lie to you every single day. It'll tell you that you have time, that you're fine, that tomorrow's guaranteed. But that face in the mirror, it knows better. And it's waiting for you to start acting like it. That's the accountability mirror. Simple habit. Painful honesty. Limitless freedom. 90 days. That's all it takes to rewrite your life's rhythm. Not a year, not a decade. Just 90 days of full focus commitment. Not perfection, not fantasy, but raw consistency. People underestimate what 90 days of true alignment can do. They think change is this grand explosion, when in truth, it's a quiet build, brick by brick, day by day. And yet, most never make it even 30 days, because they keep chasing intensity instead of integrity. See, a vow is different from a goal. A goal is something you want. A vow is something you become bound to. You don't try a vow, you honor it. You protect it like a sacred oath, because it's not just about results, it's about identity. So what's the 90-day vow? It's a contract between you and your higher self, a promise that for the next 90 days, you will live with ruthless alignment between what you say and what you do. No more half-truths. No more someday. No more waiting for motivation to show up like a guest that's always late. For 90 days, you move, whether you feel like it or not. You speak the language of action, not emotion. You build evidence that your word still means something. Because confidence isn't born from compliments. It's born from keeping promises to yourself when no one's watching. And that's what this vow is: the rebuilding of trust with the person in the mirror. Most people live in emotional debt. They owe themselves effort, discipline, honesty, and they keep paying with excuses. But you make the payment in full, one sunrise at a time. The vow starts simple. You choose one area of your life that needs truth: body, business, mindset, discipline, purpose, whatever screams for order. And you say out loud, for the next 90 days, this area belongs to me. You write it down. You date it. You sign it. You make it real. Then, you break the vow into 3 layers. Layer 1, daily ritual. Something small you commit to doing every single day, no matter what. A workout, a morning silence, a page of reading, a cold shower. Whatever anchors you to discipline. Layer 2, weekly proof. At the end of each week, you review. No judgment, just truth. Did I live the vow or just talk about it? Did I move forward or make excuses? Write it down. That's your proof of integrity. Layer 3, monthly reflection. Every 30 days, you sit in silence and look back at the patterns. Not the wins, not the hype, the patterns. Did you act in alignment? Or did comfort creep back in, disguised as balance? If so, correct course. No punishment, no guilt, just recalibration. 90 days, 3 checkpoints, 1 vow. That's it. Because discipline isn't complicated, it's just repeated honesty. And if you can keep a vow to yourself for 90 days, you can keep one for a lifetime. But make no mistake, it will test you. Around week 4, the excitement fades. Week 6, life will throw distractions that look like emergencies. Week 8, you'll start to question why you began at all. That's where most people quit, right before the breakthrough. But if you push through that valley, if you hold the line when no one's clapping, something inside you shifts. You stop needing motivation because momentum has taken over. You start craving the discipline itself because you've tasted self-respect again. By day 90, the mirror looks different. Not because your life magically transformed, but because you finally became someone you can trust. And trust, that's the foundation of everything. Without it, you build castles on sand. With it, you can rebuild an empire from dust. So write your vow. Say it out loud. Tape it to the wall. Record it in your phone if you have to. Then live it. Quietly, relentlessly, day by day. You don't need the world to see it. You just need to know you did it. Because when you can look back 90 days from now and say, I kept my word, that's a different kind of victory. It's the kind no one can take from you. That's the 90-day vow, not a challenge, not a phase. A sacred agreement between the person you are and the person you're becoming. Keep it, guard it, live it, and watch how 90 days of truth can undo 10 years of excuses. This is the moment where everything you've learned, everything you've survived, everything you've promised yourself comes together. This is where you seal it with power, not with noise, not with hype, but with conviction. See, change doesn't begin when you make a plan. It begins when you decide you're done lying to yourself. When you draw a line between who you were and who you refuse to be anymore. There comes a moment in every life where you stop negotiating with weakness. You stop saying, maybe tomorrow. You stop waiting for the perfect time. Because you realize time is what's being stolen every time you hesitate. You've heard enough words. You've watched enough videos. You've written enough plans. Now it's about the execution, the embodiment, the alignment between what you say and what you live. And this is where most people fall off. Because transformation isn't loud. It's not glamorous. It's lonely. It's quiet. It's you, fighting old habits in the dark when no one's there to applaud. But that's where power is born. Not in the spotlight, in the silence. When you could give up, but don't. When you could run, but stay. When you could complain, but create. And in that stillness, you realize something sacred. Discipline isn't restriction. It's liberation. Focus isn't punishment. It's freedom. And hard work? It's not suffering. It's the refining fire that turns potential into proof. Look at your life. Every time you've broken through, it wasn't luck. It was you. It was the moment you decided to act, even when it hurt. And that's who you need to return to. That version of you that doesn't wait for permission. That version of you that doesn't apologize for wanting more. You want a miracle? Then become consistent enough to look like one. You want confidence? Then earn it through evidence, not ego. You want peace? Then stop betraying yourself. Every dream you have requires a price, and that price is discipline paid daily. Not for a week, not for a month, but until the habit becomes identity. Because repetition is how you rewrite destiny. And the truth is, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your standards. So raise them today. Raise them until your excuses can't breathe in your presence anymore. And understand this, you don't have to be perfect to change your life. You just have to be honest. Honest enough to admit what's not working. Honest enough to call out your own comfort. Honest enough to start again when you fall short. The world doesn't need another person with potential. It needs someone with follow-through. Someone whose actions make silence louder than speeches. Someone who doesn't need to say, "Watch me," because the results already speak. That's power. Not arrogance, not performance, but quiet, grounded certainty. The kind that comes from doing what most people won't, long enough to become what most people can't. You want to change your life? Then seal it. Seal it with repetition. Seal it with prayer. Seal it with sweat. Seal it with every early morning when no one's awake but your purpose. Seal it with every late night where you choose growth instead of comfort. Because success doesn't announce itself. It arrives uninvited and sits only where discipline has made space for it. You've done the work. You've faced the mirror. You've run the audit. You've let go of the past. You've drawn the boundaries. You've rebuilt your word. Now seal it. With power. Not the kind that screams. The kind that radiates. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Because it is something. The kind of power that comes from integrity. From consistency. From walking your talk even when no one's clapping. Seal it with your habits, with your focus, with your truth. And when the world tests you, when life throws doubt in your face, look back at everything you've built and whisper, "I kept my vow. I stayed the course. I became who I said I'd be." That's not motivation. That's mastery. And mastery isn't something you chase. It's something you become. So step forward now. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Now. Seal this chapter with action. Walk like you've already been chosen. Move like the world's watching, even when it's not. Speak your truth through results, not noise. And never forget, power isn't given. It's earned. and you've earned it right here, right now. So go. Build the life that silence keeps showing you. And when it gets hard, when you want to quit, remember this moment, this vow, this fire. And say to yourself quietly, I'm not going back. I'm not done. I'm just getting started. That is how you seal it. With power, with power.